The gospel reading today, as we hear about the water swamping the boat that the disciples are in, they call out, "Lord, save us, for we are perishing." It's exactly, I think, what you and I need to be doing today. I'm sure you heard, but last night at 6 o'clock, throughout the nation, everyone was asked to pray at 6 o'clock in their own time zone. That way we would have people praying together. God is outside of time, so if you didn't hear about it, pray today. Because it doesn't matter for God if you do it at 6 o'clock last night or if you do it at 10 o'clock this morning or whenever it's going to be. But we literally are at the point of a crossroads for our country. Which way are things going to go? It's in that vein also that we need to be very clear about warning people, because I can tell you the police are preparing for riots. The businesses have been told to prepare for riots. And the left-wing media now is warning people about riots. They're planning it. Of course they're warning them. So we need to be clear about where we're going and the trouble that's coming. It's a question of what they're going to do with all of this, which obviously none of it is going to be good. I know for a fact that they have been arming all of these people that they have been bringing into the country, not all of the people, but they have brought in lots and lots of trained soldiers, and now they have been arming them. So they're all set for massive civil disobedience, civil strife, civil war, whatever you want to call it. It is going to be fake. Not fake in the sense that it isn't really happening, but fake in the sense that this really isn't about you against your neighbors. These are people who are trained, these are people who have been formed, these are people who are here for one purpose, and it's to cause trouble. Now, they want to be able to tell us all these goofy things about we need to take people's guns away and we need to do all this and that. But you need to recognize just a pattern, for instance, of what has been going on in this country. The last year, there have been, 6 or 8 different school shootings. Every single one has been a transgender person. Every one. You think about it. You take a woman and you pump her full of male hormones. Her brain is not made for that. You take a man and you pump him full of female hormones. His brain is not made for that. And now in both situations, you get the worst of both. The struggles that women deal with and the struggles that men deal with. And it's coming out in very, very angry and violent ways. Again, this is an important thing to know because the vast majority of people in that group, Antifa, are transgender people. So we have people who, number one, are not American. This is not their country. They have no care for the country. Just like what we saw happen right here a few years ago in an entirely planned production. People who were not from Minneapolis and St. Paul, 75,000 people who were not from Minneapolis and St. Paul were brought in to burn, to loot, to do whatever. They weren't from here. They didn't care. They didn't care what they did. They didn't have to live with it because they got on planes and trains and buses and left a couple of days later and just left all the mess behind. These people don't care either. They are lacking a conscience, number one. The people in charge have no conscience. And the people that they have brought in, this is not their country. These are not their towns. They don't care. So we just need to be very much aware and cautious and pray. The Lord told us through the prophets that if his people would humble themselves and would turn to him in prayer, he would heal their land. We need to actually want it healed. We can't just give lip service to God, for instance, and say, "Oh, Lord, save us because of the riots, but we want to keep killing babies." That isn't going to work. There needs to be a true conversion of heart. We can't just pray for what we want because it's convenient for what we want. This isn't a magic pill that if I do these prayers, I can keep sinning, but God will just give me what I want, and when he doesn't, then I'm going to get angry at him because he didn't do what I told him to do. We haven't been doing what he commanded us to do. St. Paul told us in the first reading that any of these other commandments, whatever they are all summed up in love of neighbor. And we have not done that as a nation. And so we need to be clear that there needs to be not just a prayer that somebody that might be decent can get into office. We need to pray that this nation will come to a conversion. And then we need to leave that to God to determine how that's going to happen. So in the meantime, prepare yourself so that this doesn't catch you off guard. And be clear about the boundaries of things. We don't need to go back to the Wild West and have everybody shooting at everybody. At the same time, with that said, just again to be clear, you have a right. You do not have an obligation. You have a right to defend yourself. However, those who have a family, you have an obligation to protect your family. So you have a right to protect yourself. You have an obligation to protect your family. Men, you have an obligation to protect your wife and your children. Let's be very clear. It's time that men need to stand up and be men. That doesn't mean act like a macho idiot. That means be a real man. That's what we need right now. We need clarity. We're going to need strength. We're going to need leadership. We're going to need prayer. And we need to call out to God, because what the apostles said as the water was coming over the boat is right where we're at now. Remember back, whatever it was, 15, 20 years ago, Cardinal Ratzinger at the time, right before he was elected Pope, gave a talk to the cardinals that had come for the conclave. And he said, right now, the water is coming over the side of the boat of the church. Well, it's been for a lot of years. It's been coming over the side of the boat of the United States of America for a long time, too. Now, put it all in context. Our Lady is said to have appeared to George Washington. And in that apparition, she told him that there would be 3 wars on American soil. The first one was the one that he was engaged in at the time, the Revolutionary War. The second one was the Civil War. The third one, interestingly, she said America would be invaded by her enemies through all of the borders from multiple countries all at the same time. Now you look at that and say, well, how could that happen? Well, they engineered that one rather nicely, and so it's been happening, and that's where we're at. But she did say that America would ultimately win out. But it's not just going to be about winning a war. It's about winning souls. This is about giving the country back to God. But I've told you many times, and it bears repeating, there are only 2 countries in the history of the world that have been consecrated to God from their inception, and that is Israel and the United States of America. The very first act of Congress in union with the President of the United States was to go and pray for 3 hours and consecrate the nation to God. The church that they did that, because at the time the capital was New York, the church they did that was St. John's Episcopalian Church, little tiny church that what they now call Ground Zero in New York is right there. And amazingly, something fell from one of those buildings when they came down, and it protected that little church. Everything in the area was destroyed except that little tiny church. That was where the country was consecrated to God. So let's reconsecrate it to God. Let's turn our hearts to Him, call out to Him, because the water is coming over the side of the boat. In fact, it's just about swamped at this point, and so I don't think human bailing is going to solve the problem. We need a divine intervention, and it's going to need to be pretty serious, because what these people have planned is not good. So prepare yourself spiritually far more than physically, but be ready and pray. Call out to God, but more than anything, as you do that, make the determination to change your own life, to get rid of the sinfulness, to get rid of the things that are offending God, and then pray that our nation will have a conscience once again, that it will become what it was intended to be, and that is a Christian nation that is consecrated to God. And the Catholic bishops of America consecrated it to the Immaculate Conception. So call out to our Blessed Lady as well, and let's get this country turned back to where it belongs, so that we truly are that light on the hill, that we are the ones that the world would once again be able to look to for morality, for truth, for a country that is righteous and serving the Lord.